Vitamin B12, also known as cobalamin, is an absolutely massive molecule. It's going to be hard to fit it on the screen. If you look at the structure, and I describe it as best as I possibly can, you're going to have 6 primary amide sort of carbon chains and little tails in a way, and then you're going to have one more secondary amide, which leads to a phosphate group, which then leads to a ribose group, and then that leads to some kind of nitrogen ring thing with a benzene, and then that one nitrogen atom on the little ring is going to be one of 4 dative bonds to a central cobalt atom, and that cobalt atom is then going to have 2 normal covalent bonds. One of those covalent bonds is going to be to the little R group that you may be able to see on this molecule, wherever the hell I put it on the screen, and that R group is a deoxyadenylyl group. Now, vitamin B12 deficiency doesn't exactly have a name, but symptoms have been isolated, specifically things like headaches and dizziness, general sort of brain issues, and pale skin and stuff like that. Foods that vitamin B12 is found in at the highest level in terms of mcg ratios, I'm pretty sure that's like micrograms to gram of food, is chicken is the highest. It's got a rate of like something like 9 point something micrograms per gram of chicken. And then as you sort of go down, you're going to have things like bran, sardines and eggs, and I think turkey as well was up there as well. Loads and loads of different stuff. Now you may be wondering, what the hell can this massive molecule possibly be used for inside of the body? And there are surprisingly high amount of things. It is a coenzyme. Now in terms of its actual uses as a prosthetic coenzyme, you're going to have DNA synthesis, which is probably one of the most useful processes inside of our bodily systems ever. Then you're going to have white blood cell and red blood cell synthesis, which is also very useful. Red blood cells are used to carry oxygen around the body, and white blood cells to fight diseases and pathogens and all that sort of stuff. This stuff is incredibly useful to the body. But in terms of reactions and chemical reactions and specific things and specific mechanisms, one specific reaction that vitamin B12 is a cofactor in is the formation of succinyl-CoA from methylmalonyl-CoA. Now, methylmalonyl-CoA is a metabolic product of certain amino acid metabolism. Things such as valine. I think valine can be turned into isobutyryl-CoA, which can then be turned into methylmalonyl-CoA, which can be turned into succinyl-CoA, and succinyl-CoA is part of the citric acid cycle, which is used to produce energy. Now, how exactly is this cobalamin molecule used inside of this chemical reaction? Now, if you remember the little R group that I talked about, the deoxyadenylyl group, this deoxyadenylyl group detaches from the cobalamin molecule to not become a deoxyadenylyl group. It is now a deoxyadenyl radical, and radicals are incredibly reactive. Radicals are things that have an unpaired electron, and this is because the bond between the cobalt and the CH2 are split heterolytically, meaning they each gained 1 electron from the bonding pair. Now this radical will radicalize the methyl group on methylmalonyl-CoA, and that means that the radical that was deoxyadenylyl is not a radical anymore, and it's actually just a stable product, and on the methylmalonyl, now that is a CH2 radical. And as I mentioned before, radicals are extremely reactive, and it's going to obtain an electron in any way, shape or form it wants to. And so it's going to attack the most electron-rich, electron-dense site on the molecule, which is the CO double bond. And so it's going to attack that, and it's going to bond to the carbon that is connected to the oxygen. And that oxygen is then going to become a radical as well. So in this molecule, you've now got a little sort of triangle shape where the original methyl group is bonded to the first carbon and also the third carbon. And now the bond between the first carbon and the third carbon is going to break and reform the carbon-oxygen double bond, and you're then going to have a straight carbon chain of 4. And that is then succinyl-CoA. Nothing else actually has to be done to it. And the reason that it needs this sort of radical reaction is because it's going to be quite a hard thing to move a pretty unreactive methyl group into the middle of the succinyl-CoA molecule, because once it is then in that 4 carbon straight chain, the deoxyadenylyl group, which had the CH3 now that it wasn't a radical, will give a hydrogen back, and then it itself will become the radical again and probably then rebind to the cobalamin and go off forth to do another enzymatic reaction. Now, another chemical reaction involving cobalamin is methionine synthase, and this whole process and reaction is essentially like box passing. When you take a box out of a van and you've got like a queue of people which take the box and you go like that, and then someone else will take the box and go like that, and it's like a whole queue of people, even though it would probably be quicker if one person did it. That is essentially what this whole methionine synthase reaction does. It involves the folate cycle, and it involves 5-methyl THF turning into THF, and then the methyl group has to go somewhere. That methyl group will attach to a cobalt, and then it's going to form a positive cobalt, and it's going to be in the 3rd oxidation state. I think there's going to be 3 lines next to the cobalt, and I'm pretty sure that has something to do with oxidation states, and that is when the methyl group is attached to it. And then this enzyme is going to use cobalamin to give the methyl group to homocysteine, and then homocysteine becomes methionine, and cobalt and cobalamin returns to just a CO1 atom, and the molecule returns to normal, and the whole reaction can sort of happen again in loads and loads of different cells and places inside of the body. So those are 2 completely different mechanisms of cobalamin. I'm sure there's probably some which are completely different, but I'm hoping that that is enough of a sort of knowledge basis for you on vitamin B12 and its specific use inside of the body, and a lot more chemical knowledge about radicals and all that sort of stuff. But with that, I recommend subscribing for more content like this, and have a good day.